This is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. Just 6 short years ago in Fort Bend County, Texas, the American Democrats, the Fort Bend County Democrats, attained a majority status in Fort Bend County. They had won the majority of the locally elected political positions and became the governing party for Fort Bend County for the first time ever. Fort Bend County, Texas was established in 1838, and for the previous 180 years, Fort Bend had been Republican run. So this was quite a dramatic change to the county. And the guiding ideology of today's American Democrat Party is the progressive Marxist ideology. It is a totalitarian ideology. It is an ideology that is toxic to mankind. So this new ideology has now touched down in Fort Bend County for the first time ever. And county Democrats, they let it be known early on that a new set of ideas would be the governing ideas for Fort Bend County. And the traditional ideas of Fort Bend County, the ideas of liberty, of freedom, those were things of the past. American Democrats now demanded from county residents that the county residents would obey the county officials. There was a call for obedience. It was expected that county residents would obey the dictates of county officials of the new establishment, of the new American Democrat Party establishment in Fort Bend County. It was expected, essentially, the county residents would bend the knee and kiss the ring of the new county officials. And it could not be more clear that the Fort Bend County Democrats could not make it more clear that things were about to change. They initiated a number of initiatives that were completely intrusive to the freedoms, the rights, the livelihoods of Fort Bend County residents. Radical changes that were dramatic in nature. I will give you just a couple of examples. In response to the Wuhan flu, the COVID virus, a virus that had a near 100% survival rate, on the flimsy basis of that 99.9% survival rate of the COVID flu, county Democrats demanded that businesses be shut down. For the first time in Fort Bend County's history, there was a business closure dictate. And what county officials did was they deemed certain businesses non-essential, and they had those businesses shut down. And what non-essential means is it means locally owned. It means the small businesses that are owned by the residents of Fort Bend County. Those ones would be shut down while the big box corporate retailers would be allowed to stay open and flourish. And with that dictate, county residents knew at that point in time that the county officials were no longer serving the county residents. They were serving some other party. And never before in the history of Fort Bend County have county officials, have they classified businesses and then picked and chose by dictate which would stay open and which would close. This had never been happened before. And the question becomes, what kind of damage was done to the people of Fort Bend County, to their incomes, to their livelihoods? How many of their businesses were shut down? How many of the retirements were lost by the actions of Fort Bend County officials? And that's just one example. I will give another example. Fort Bend County officials, in response to that Wuhan flu, that COVID virus that had a near 100% survival rate, in response to that, county officials demanded that the children of Fort Bend County wear a mask on their face for more than 8 hours a day. And they demanded this regardless of parent consent. And so for the first time ever in the history of Fort Bend County, we see a wrestling match, a struggle, where Fort Bend County officials are attempting to rip control of the child, wrestle the autonomy of the child away from the parent so that the county official can begin making decisions for the children of Fort Bend County, regardless of parental consent. This had never happened before. And while county officials were doing this, at the same time, they were promoting on a daily basis, vigorously, a very questionable medicine, a very questionable vaccine, a vaccine that has a long injury report. And Fort Bend County officials were pushing this daily while they were demanding that children wear masks on their face. And to every county resident in Fort Bend, to every parent in Fort Bend, the message was clear. If they can get that mask on the face of the child by force, the next thing coming was the children would be an intent for the children to be vaccinated with this questionable vaccine. And I will give one more example. For the first time ever in the history of Fort Bend County, the newly elected Democrat county establishment, they initiated a medical surveillance campaign where county representatives would come to your door at your house and ask you intimate questions about your medical records, about your health, about your vaccination status. This had never been happened before. This set of ideas were so intrusive. They were so foreign to the people of Fort Bend County. And Fort Bend County it was not ready for this. Fort Bend County traditionally is a sleepy country town. It's uneventful, it's neighborly, the people are kind, and they were not ready for this new Marxist affront on their values. And they were caught off guard. But in the spirit of 1776, the county residents sprung into action. And what they did is they identified early on that this was a battle of ideas, a battle of ideology. It was a political struggle. It was a battle of ideas and a battle of good versus evil, of freedom versus slavery. The party of enslavement, the American Democrat Party, had returned once again with another set of bad ideas. And in the spirit of 1776, the county residents sprung into action. And with that idea that the idea to set 1,000 brush fires across the county, brush fires for freedom, that type of idea set hold in Fort Bend County. And what the county residents did was they formed into political activist groups, freedom-based activist groups. And from those groups, they began to confront county officials at the school board meetings, at the county commissioners' courts. And what they would do is they would confront them with statistics of vaccine injuries, or they would expose the illicit pornographic materials in the school libraries, or they would demand a return to law and order. And they took their activism to another level, and they began having outdoor freedom rallies in Sugar Land Town Square while county officials were calling for people to be locked in their home. In an act of defiance, the county residents held outdoor freedom events. And county residents would confront sheriff's deputies. When sheriff's deputies would demand the county residents wear a mask, when there was no lawful basis for a county sheriff to do that, the county residents would question and challenge the legal status of that command and push back on the county deputy and stay mask free. And then they formed into a political movement and began promoting, endorsing, supporting candidates for political office in an attempt to take back our county government. And many of those positions, many of those seats have been won back. But the Fort Bend County Democrats are still the majority party in the county. And essentially what happened is the Fort Bend County Democrats came in with all of these initiatives, and the Fort Bend County residents confronted them and brought it to a stalemate, brought it to a stall. And essentially both groups are now sort of stuck in the mud. But what's happening is day by day, the Fort Bend County residents continue to go out and find new candidates for office and promote them, and they're having political debates to question these candidates and make sure that they are freedom-based candidates, and then they fight for us to take back our local county. And today this is the Chris Heasley Show, and on this show, the whole purpose of this show is a call to action to county residents of Harris County and to Fort Bend County to get politically active at the local level and begin taking back your government. And today, on today's Chris Heasley Show, we have two guests. We have G2 on the line, and we have...
Good afternoon.
Hey, good to see you, G2. And we have Matt Morgan. Matt Morgan is a political candidate. He has just won the Republican primary, and he is a Republican Party candidate for which district, Matt?
House District 26.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. So today what we're going to be talking about is the state of Fort Bend County and the freedom movement within it. And I just want to start off, Matt here will be potentially going to the State House as the representative for Fort Bend County. And I'd just like to start off by having Matt introduce himself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. First, Chris, thank you for having me on your show. Appreciate what you do, not only here on the radio, but in the community as well. Again, my name's Matt Morgan. I'm running to be your next state representative in House District 26, which is basically Katy, Richmond, and parts of Rosenberg as well. A little bit about me is I'm an Eagle Scout, Cub Scout leader, former Little League board member, a small business owner out in the community, and the City of Houston proclaimed a day in my honor for outstanding community service. We raised over 100,000 books to give away to parents whose families couldn't afford to buy their children's books, so they would not fall behind in school and education. And that's a big topic for me, is school and education. Texas ranks 42nd in the nation in education, and there's no reason we're in the bottom 10. We definitely need to move ourselves into the top 10 there. So, but thank you again for having me, on this show, and appreciate all you do. And look, I think this message, you're talking about and what's happening resonates not only with, the community in Harris County and Fort Bend County, Montgomery County, Chambers County, Galveston County, all the surrounding areas, right? So, I will tell you, there is we have the ability to make change, and that change comes through education of the public. And, what is it that, Republicans stand for versus Democrats stand for, right? We stand for, faith, family, and freedom, right? And, you were speaking a lot about freedom there. And yes, individual freedoms are extremely important to me, to us, and, to the Republican platform. And so ensuring that people have the ability to choose, what they take, get injected into their body and what they don't, and their children, the same thing, making sure that, we protect those individual freedoms and make sure that those aren't eroded is something extremely important to us. And that's why, tons of people have migrated to this country. That's why, the Mayflower came here so many years ago, right? Is they were looking for individual freedoms to, worship how they wanted to worship and everything else. And so, we have a long history of that. We need to continue that, and we need champions that will fight for that.
Well, I think that story of Fort Bend County, really Harris County had a near identical story, just simply on a bigger scale because it is a bigger county. But I think that you could take what happened in Fort Bend County and essentially replicate it out, because I think every county in Texas had some sort of a similar situation. And ultimately what happened is when the Wuhan flu arrived on our lands, it simply presented an opportunity for governments to go full totalitarian on their people. And it seems to me as if nearly every single government of every sort went for it. But let me ask you, Matt, so what caused you to get involved? Was it that event? Was it something before that? But what caused you? You have a small business. Why are you taking this huge dedication, this huge amount of time, and dedicating it to this political effort?
Well, we need people that want to stand up for we the people, which is why I raised my hand to run. I want to be a person of the people, for the people, and by the people. And I think if we had more people that were willing to stand up and do that, I think our country would be in a much better place and state than it currently is. Austin is broken, and we need people to go there to fix Austin. And, we talked about, the shutdown, and I got involved before the shutdown. I got involved as soon as we lost 2016. I raised my hand to get involved in the party. I was extremely concerned about, the county I'd grown up in. I'd lived in almost my entire life. And, I wanted to make sure that I was doing my part, and this should resonate with every one of the listeners is you can do your part. And if everyone steps up and does their part, even if it's on voting day, make sure that your 10 closest friends have voted, or, when it comes to early voting, text 10 people, tell them, here it is. If they haven't done time to research, who they should vote for, then, help them out with, hey, these are people I vetted. You may disagree with me, but this is the reason why I think you should vote for, these 5 people, these 6 people, or whatever, and text that to your friends and family and ask them to go to the polls. Everyone needs to be involved because it affects your life. You don't see it you do see it, but you don't really see it. And I think that's a problem. You see it at the gas station, you see it at the grocery store, you see it everywhere you go. You see it in your rent or your mortgage rates and everything else, but it's not coming at you all at once. And that's all government that's doing that to you. So if you get involved now and you focus your energies now, you can make a difference. You can make a huge difference in, the projection of the country. And so, excuse me, I raised my hand because I was taught that those that have the ability to do something and make change should do that, right? And so that's the reason I really raised my hand to run, is because I knew I could. I knew I could, win the primary. I know I can win the seat in November. And, I know I can make a change and a difference for, not only the people of the district, but the people of Texas. And I didn't want to watch it continue to go to a place where our individual rights and freedoms were eroded from us, because I don't want my kids and my grandkids to potentially grow up in that environment. So that's why I raised my hand to run.
Well, I look at it like, the Australians. I feel like the Australians, every day they pray for Texas because Australia is so close to a full loss of all liberties. It's in such a totalitarian state, especially during that Wuhan flu lockdown. And I feel like if Texas goes, the country goes. If the country goes, the world goes. So I feel like Australians are praying for Texas to win the fight for liberty on a daily basis. What are at the state level, what are the driving issues? Where are they mostly infringing on our rights? Where will you take your energies to at the beginning?
Well, so those are 2 different questions. So first, I will tell you, and many of you may or may not remember Shelley Luther, who resisted the shutdowns and was actually put in jail. She lives in the Dallas area. She was actually put in jail for not closing her salon, right? And I had the fortunate opportunity of having a brief conversation with her the other day. She has won the Republican nominee for her place up there as a state rep as well. And so I'm excited to go to work with her to ensure that, we don't have further government shutdowns and we don't let the government pick winners and losers. The small business is the backbone of, not only Texas, but the country. And we have to do all we can to actually support, the businesses and the small businesses, right? So I want to ensure that those freedoms and rights are there and we don't have another issue where that happens and somebody gets jailed for opening their business to the public. Another big issue that we really have in Texas is, our border is wide open. I know we see pictures where, hey, we put up some razor wire, or, hey, we got some buoys and stuff like that. But what most Texans don't know is, even those that pay close attention to things politically, and they don't show you, is we have roughly 150 miles of barrier between us and Mexico. And there is 1,200 miles roughly of border between Texas and Mexico. And so there is so many places and spaces that those people can cross the border that we need to do a much, much, much better job of securing that. I don't think what Texans don't quite realize is, you have increased cost of insurance, you have increased cost of goods and everything else because of the influx of, the illegal immigrants coming into our state. And they cost Texans billions, tens of billions of dollars every year. There was a study that was recently published that said we spend $7 billion a year educating illegals. We spend $2 billion a year prosecuting them for crimes that they commit while they're on our soil, let alone all the other costs, and then those costs push down to us. So we are spending tens of billions of dollars every year because of illegal immigration. I think I want to shut down illegal immigration. I want to have a big, a wide open, front door that people come in the right way. And I think they should be able to come in the right way. And I want that to, huge gates, right, to let them come in the right way. But those that are just, sneaking across the border are people that, are costing us billions, and it's increasing your tax burden. And so I want to make sure that stops, but we let people come in the front door as frequently and as often as we can.
So you answered with two things there. You talked about Shelley Luther and the effect on. She's a small business owner in Dallas, and when they did the mass, when they brought the Wuhan flu shutdown, it had an incredible impact on her business in a negative way. And then you talked about the border, but I want to just jump to that first subject for just a second. G2, are you there?
I am.
One of the things I always think is that these Democrats, they want us to forget that what they did to us 4 years ago. They put these lockdowns, this totalitarian state. The only reason we got that off of our back is because Americans stood up and confronted them. I don't believe they ever had any intention of if we didn't fight for our freedoms to come back, I don't think they had any intention of giving them back. But it's as if today they want us to forget about what they did. Do you have any opinion on what you think that those actions had? And because in Fort Bend County, they shut down all the local businesses. And I always ask the question, why is nobody asking what damage was done to the local businesses? How badly were they impacted? Do you have any opinion on that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Matt, you pointed out that the impact that these lockdowns had on businesses was significant. It caused a lot of people to sort of wake up and come out and start thinking, hey, what is it that my local government does? What does my state government do to me? What powers does a government have, and how does a president fit in? People became much more interested and alert and aware about what's happening in government because of this extreme, aggressive action taken by all levels of government. And then the money came, and all of a sudden they were flush with cash, and that changed the way everybody behaved. And local governments began to execute plans not in the interest of their constituents, but rather in the interest of getting more money from the state or the federal government. Of course, the states did the same and began to change the way they operated, and they adopted, in many cases, the policies and the agenda of these radical globalists that control our federal government. So now in Texas, this awareness has reached really quite a crescendo, right? So I have followed this J.C. Jatan, Matt Morgan race a little bit, and it's clear that J.C. Jatan did not expect to get taken out. When they went after Paxton, they thought they were going to succeed in taking him down. And if you look at his fiscal responsibility score, it is a solid F. And yet he was on the Appropriations Committee in the Texas State Legislature. So here's the thing. People figured that out, and that changed the outcome of this primary. It changed the outcome of the Ken Paxton impeachment effort, which was easily overturned. Well, not easily, which was overturned because of a surge of reaction from the people saying, we're not going to let you do this. We know it's just political. You're trying to shut our voice down. You're trying to take out the Attorney General we voted for. So in that context now, you've overcome this J.C. Jatan primary effort. You're now a much more likely candidate to make it to Austin. What is your view of how the state, Texas, and frankly other states, can recover their independence from federal government when they become so dependent upon federal government for money?
Well, so that's a great question. Honestly, our number one asset that we have in fighting back against this current administration has been, our Attorney General. He has won so many fights and battles for us. It's I can't even count them all. Not just against the federal government, but also against others that want to rein in our free speech and whatnot. And so, we have Ken Paxton has been fantastic in that. He has won so many countless suits against the Biden administration, continues to file suits against them all the time. He's, been pushing big tech that wants to censor us and has censored us. And so, at the state level, we need to ensure that, he has the laws that he needs in order to, push back and ensure that Texans have these freedoms, right? And actually, if you look at it, Texas is actually, if you will, an exporter of money. We put more money into the federal government than we receive back from the federal government. So, there's things that we, may need to look at and consider to ensure that, they continue to comply with our freedoms and rights that we have at the state level, right? And not to infringe upon those. But, just like, Biden's reactionary thing to, Texas, putting up more border wall was, well, I'm going to shut down your ability to build a liquid natural gas export facility in Texas. Mm-hmm. He shouldn't have that ability. That's on Texas soil that we're doing that. And that's natural gas coming from Texas lands. So I have a big problem with him trying to say we can't build that and he's not going to allow us to do that. No, I'm sorry. And I'm grateful that we have other fighters in Austin that will, push back on those items in the Biden administration. And look, that means a lot to us. Texas is such a great state, and we have these entities and these groups that want to slow us down. They want to, the goal is turn Texas blue, right? So they want us to be a democratic state. And as you stated, if we lose Texas, we lose the country and maybe more, right? So yep. I'm standing up to fight back and push back against that. I think the more we engage with people, and every listener on the radio, you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to get out of your comfort zone. Do you want us to turn into California in 15 years, right? You have to get out of your comfort zone. If you're not willing to get out of your comfort zone, then we may turn into California in the next 20 years. So
yeah,
get out of your
I'm surprised at how many voters that say are hunters or that are that go to gun shows, that enjoy shooting and yet don't vote. And it's really it's counterintuitive, because we know that the Democrats and the globalists that have got control of our federal government are dead set on taking away your right to own firearms. And they've been successful in places like New Zealand and Australia, in Europe. One of the few places they've been successful or been unsuccessful is in the United States. And it is a lot of folks' opinion that the only reason our Constitution is still in place at all is because they know that, half of the population has 300 million firearms and mountains of ammunition, and they won't allow them to take that Constitution away. So having a state where the Republican Party now seems to be shifting away from the establishment and much more toward the interests of the people, that's great news, because I see other states where the Republican Party complains constantly about what Democrats do, but they don't do anything to fight it. They may put up a press release now and again, or a little fight in some legislature, but it's not really a genuine fight, because in many cases they're on the same team. It's that uniparty idea. But here in Texas, I'm looking at this and seeing what looks to me to be a pretty significant transition. And when I look across the country, what I'm seeing is the American people, again, far more awake, far more aware, and they're getting more active. One thing that's clear is that the integrity of our elections is a critical element. That is controlled by the state legislatures. And in order to win in November, the people are going to have to come out in massive numbers to overcome whatever cheating there might be. But also, we need a state legislature that's willing to take on election integrity and pass laws that continuously strengthen the security and transparency of the election system. Where do you think the Republican Party's legislative caucus in Texas is on that? Is this a priority? Is it something they're not really paying attention to?
So that's a good question, and I'll be 100% honest with you. I have not spoken to all the members of the caucus, if you will.
Sure.
So I can tell you it's something that's important to me. It's something I campaigned on, and it's something that I have friends that are Democrats that I have spoken to and talked to, and they agree with many of my ideas on election integrity, right? So, maybe not the elected officials, but, just the everyday personnel. And if you look at it, I actually wrote an op-ed that The Blaze, Glenn Beck's The Blaze, published regarding election integrity. And one of the simplest things that we can do is we need to, number one, every ballot should have a printed serial number that you can read that's just like what's on a dollar bill. If we can print a serial number on every piece of paper dollar that we print, at our mints and change that serial number, we ought to be able to do the same on our ballots, and that should be legible and readable by the judge, not something you scan with a QR code or, barcode or whatever, but something that the actual election judge can read, right? We also need to track what serial numbers are created, and we should never create, more than what we have registered voters in the county. You may need a few extra for provisional ballots, but basically you're going to create a number of serial numbers that are tied to the voters. And, with that, if you get two of the same serial numbers that come back, well, then those ballots need to be put aside, right? If you get a serial number that comes back on a mail-in ballot, let's say that's not one that you issued out, well, guess what? That needs to be put aside as well. And so, and there's multiple other steps like Harris County used to, and they don't do anymore. But what we need to implement is if you get called for jury duty, which is our duty to go do as citizens, right, to serve on a jury. If you get called and you respond saying, I'm not doing jury duty because I'm not a citizen, well, then if they should double check the voter rolls, see if you're registered as a voter. If you're registered as a voter and you affirmatively tell a government agency that you are not a citizen, you should be removed from the voter rolls, and that has to be cured that you actually are. Because you either lied when you registered to vote, or you lied on the jury summons, right? So it needs to, those two things need to match. And so we need to implement
You make an
that.
interesting point. When you look at the voter rolls, for example, in Wisconsin, they have 4 million people who are eligible to vote, but they've got 7 million people on their voter rolls. So that's 7 million opportunities for someone to submit a fraudulent vote that won't be detected because it's just a registered voter registering. But in fact, they're not legitimate registered voters. So that focus on getting your voter rolls right is a critical election integrity point.
Well, it's paramount, right? It's paramount. And look, I want every single citizen to have the ability and right to vote in our elections. And I want them to actually participate. That's what makes us a great nation is, the debate of ideas and, their participation in those elections. I want every citizen to participate. But every non-citizen that participates cheapens every citizen's votes. And so, it's a fine line that you walk there, but you need to make sure that every citizen has the ability to vote that wants to vote. But we also need to make sure that those that aren't citizens aren't voting. Or, another example, and I'm more familiar with Fort Bend County voter rolls because I've worked for years to clean those up, is we've had people on our voter rolls in Fort Bend County that have been deceased for more than a decade still on our voter rolls, right? So, those are things that they're simple solutions, common sense solutions to clear those up, fix those issues and problems. And, they did a little bit of that in this last legislative session. It did not go near where they needed to ensure that stuff is completely robust and resolved. So, we have more to work on and work towards. And so, I have some of those plans and ideas already in place. Obviously, I laid them out, like I said, in that op-ed there on The Blaze regarding that.
What about the machines? Overall, your opinion on the machines?
Well, here's what I'll say. Knowing that what it would take to hand count every ballot, right? That's an extremely labor-intensive task. So I kind of am, personally, I'm kind of okay with it. Print your ballot, you have a serial number on your ballot, and it reads it, because if you have to go recount, you have physical ballots that you can actually recount. Does that make sense? Now, a few years ago, 4 years ago in Fort Bend County, we didn't have those paper ballots. So it was literally the machine, you punched it in, and the machine then captured your vote and recorded it on a SD card, and who knows what happened where and everything else. Now, there is, protocol in place. Every machine, before it's delivered into the field, is supposed to be wiped and have basically this certain set of criteria on it that is this, the Secretary of State has, and no other code but this specific code. Are there still some hiccups in that process that we could improve upon? I do, but you're talking about increasing the cost of elections by probably millions of dollars to have people hand count every ballot, hundreds of or thousands more volunteers, right? And I don't know that we have that. And if you think about it, Harris County at times takes a significantly long time to report their elections. They may be weeks or months out if they have to hand count everything, right? So I don't want us to take months to figure out who won an election if it's close. So I think we need to balance that and be, I'm not saying absolutely no, but I want to make, I do always want to have a hand copy of every ballot, if that makes sense.
So when it comes to paper ballots, there are two kinds. There's one that when you go to a polling place, you touch a screen and it prints out a slip, and that slip tells you who you voted for. And then, of course, there are the regular hand-filled out ballots where you get a ballot, you use a pencil and fill it in. What has been found in the 2023 election cycle is that sometimes the machines that print ballots actually print an outcome that's different than what it records on its memory stick. So there's a little bit more caution now around these machines and how they work and the systems that protect them. But to your point, you have to have a logical system that can be executed in a timely manner. And we all remember when we didn't have machines and we had results that night. So there's an answer somewhere in there where we have a secure election, where someone playing with software can't change the outcome, and yet we have an efficient and well-managed process. So I understand your point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's jump to the border. One of the things I think that's happening, I mean, it is my opinion that the financial pressures that the people are feeling are incredible. We have the inflation; it's out of control. Gas prices out of control. We have an economy that is not in good shape, and then we have this migrant invasion on our southern border, which they will replace our working class. They're coming here specifically with the intent of driving down the wage of the American workers, and it's going to start first with our basic skilled workers. And so my question for you is, what can we do to stop this migratory invasion, to stop the Democrats with their intent on just completely demolishing our border?
Well, and that's why, that's part of the reasons I raised my hand to run as well. Like I said, I mentioned Texas has 1,200 miles of border with Mexico, and we have roughly 10% of that has some sort of barrier. So I actually have a plan to work to actually build the entire wall. If the federal government won't do it, the state of Texas needs to do it, because the cost to the citizens of the state is too great. Your property taxes are higher, your car insurance is higher, your health insurance is higher. I mean, besides the other fixed costs that we already know, all these other costs to you as a Texan is significantly higher because of these things. And so, like I said, I want a big front door, people can come in, but we have to close the border down and we have to have control of our border, and we don't have control of it. So, I have a plan to actually put in place to have Texas help get control of that. And what I would like to do is, and what I have said is, the first day, second day I'm in office, I'm going to ask, God willing, I'm going to ask my staff to work on getting me the numbers of the people that own land on the border. And I want to work through getting an agreement with those people to allow Texas to have an easement to build a wall on their property. And then those that we can get those agreements with, great. Those that we can't, then there's a piece of legislation I'd like to author and see passed that allows Texas to have, a 50-foot easement with its border with Mexico so that we can protect the people of Texas.
Do politicians keep that border open so that they can take pictures next to it every other campaign cycle and shake their fists stating that they're going to close the border?
Well, it certainly appears that way. If you think about it, how many billions of dollars the state has spent. I remember years ago when we put the containers right up, and hey, look at us, we're protecting our border, and we bought 40 containers to put out there, and then we've now put razor wire on top of those containers, and it's like you're just doing a minimal amount, and I'm tired of the op-ed. I'm tired of the photo ops at the border every 2 years, every 4 years, that happen. I'm ready for it to be actually secured for the people of Texas. I'm ready for it to be completed.
That's a great point. And some things have changed around this border. One is that more and more towns and counties across America realize that they're border towns now because, as everybody says, every town is a border town. It is every town that's being affected by the crime, by the growth of these gangs. We now have Venezuelan gangs that are rising up in Chicago and New York that were never there before. So this is a real issue. As a result of that, not only was Abbott motivated, finally, after years of no action, to put somebody on that border and at least defend a few hundred yards of it, but you also had Tennessee saying, I'm going to send down people. You had other states that previously, Georgia, who not exactly a bastion of conservative Republican leadership, they're sending people down. So now you're in a position where this has become such a politically critical issue that governors who previously would refuse to take action are acting, and they're getting tremendous support from their citizens for doing that. That's quite a difference. And so now I'm thinking, well, that has to change the calculus in Texas, which up to now has simply stood alone on that border. Do you see much benefit in the future? How do we leverage all of these other states that are saying, hey, it's our border too, we'll stand with Texas?
Well, so, they're already working through some of those things. It's, so that I'll give you an example. One of those is, we have our Texas National Guard that's down there on the border, and they're being supplemented with, National Guard from Georgia and other states, as you mentioned, right? So not all the resources and cost is on Texas. It's being shared with other states now, right? I think you have the one of the governors in the Dakotas said, hey, I'm sending, barbed wire down there, right? So we have other people stepping up and coming in. I mean, if you look at it, Texas has had more than populations of many, many states of illegal immigrants cross our border, right? And so, most states couldn't handle that big an influx of illegal immigration coming into their state, and we've had that. So, the more we can do to slow and push back on, those illegal immigrations, the better off we are. But again, like I said, and I'm going to, reiterate this, for the audience, is big front door, but we definitely got to close that border down all we can.
I think part of the strategy is the border counties, okay, they're being ravaged. And so what happens is the people can't take it anymore. They begin to move out. And that allows the globalists, the billionaire class, to go in and buy up that land in our border counties. or it allows the cartels themselves to buy up the land in the border counties. Again, the people leave. They can't take this crime. They can't take this overflow, this danger coming from our southern border. It leaves a gaping wound there where people with nefarious intentions can go buy up the land in our border counties and start controlling those counties.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point there. That's quite that's quite possible. So, and like I said, the burden on our education system, is very, very impactful as well, right? So we spend $7 billion of our tax dollars, your property tax money, well, your sales tax money really is what it is, educating, the illegal immigrants into our country. And look, it's not the child's fault. I get that. No one blames the child. They're pulled across, sometimes with relatives, sometimes not, and no one blames the child, but the cost is so great to our country and our society that, again, Texas, I mentioned it before, Texas is in the bottom 10 in education, and I certainly want to see us in the top 10. I come from a long line of educators. My great-grandparents were teachers. My mom's a retired school teacher, and my sister's a school teacher. And so, education is something that's extremely important, and Texas, being as great as it is, should never be in the bottom 10 of that category, and I'd like to see us move to the top 10.
Okay, so we've had this conversation for some time where we haven't found a single good thing about this migratory invasion happening on our southern border, and it simply presents the question, why is the Biden administration, why does the American Democrat Party, why do they want the border open when there's nothing good that comes to Americans from it?
Well, I think it's, a couple of things. One, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you talked about votes and you talked about cheap labor. And I think those are the two things that, that they're looking for and looking towards, right?
But the American Democrat Party presents itself as the defender of the small guy. So they're presenting themselves as the defender of the small guy, but they're potentially working with the corporations to allow these people to come over. I think that's the conclusion that we're sort of coming to. G2, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's always a contradiction in terms when you talk about the Democrat Party, because they seem to take every action possible to make this country less democratic. They say, we stand to protect our democracy, therefore we have to take away the choice that people might have, for example, to select a candidate of their choice. We have to, take away the integrity of our borders. Our only federal rule, or our primary federal responsibility, is to defend our border, and yet they refuse to do that and then talk about somehow defending our democracy. They've said democracy so many times that most people think we actually live in one rather than in a representative republic, which it is. So when you look at the policies they implement, the way they use the legal system and the justice system to attack and undermine enemies, you realize pretty quickly that the Democrat Party is incredibly anti-democratic. And yet, Chris, to your point, so many people still think this is the party that's standing up for the small guy. It's something that has to change, and it is changing very quickly, which is why I think we've seen this shift in Texas politically. I think it's why we're seeing this shift throughout the Republican Party to be a more aggressive party, more willing to stand up to defend the Constitution, to defend the people. I think this reaction to watching these globalists in the Democrat Party tear this country down is actually making the Republican Party finally much more strong.
Well, I think, okay, so another issue. We brought up that the Democrats are essentially supporting an open border, which is having a direct impact on the minority communities that they purport to represent. So that's of course, we're all going to question their intentions there. But here's another one, school choice. Matt's going to know about this. But it is fairly common sense to anyone in the listening audience. The money should follow the child. If we allow the money to follow the child, we will have a free market growth explosion in our schools in a good way, where you will see just robust competition and growth and an overall upgrade in the quality of our education for everyone. And we have these Texans that have their children in these schools that are of the worst state. The people should not be oppressed like that. They should be allowed to say, no, I want my kid going to this school, and the money follows it. The Democrats oppose it. Okay? Why? The Democrats, the supposed defender of the little guy, they oppose the money following the child. Matt, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I will say a few things. So one, not every Democrat actually opposes that. I've actually had conversations with some, and there are some Republicans that oppose it, right? It depends on the legislation, how the legislation's written regarding it, et cetera. Like I said, well, I'll give you a few more statistics on, things that we need to ensure that we do to fix education. And I am, pro-education, and I want every child in Texas to get a fantastic education. We had 55,000 teachers retire, I believe it was last year, and we only had 11,000 come in to take their place. So that's hurting Texas and our ability to educate, the children in Texas. So we can't have a net loss of 44,000 teachers when we have, a net increase of new students, right? So we have to have solutions that actually work for, the children. And so, there are different solutions, and some found that, online schools work for them, right? Some others have that, homeschool works for them. Some have that charter schools work for them, and some, faith-based or other-based education, works for them. And so we need to make sure that every child has, what they need to learn in the environment that works best for every child.
There should be a cornucopia of options available to the parents, is what you're saying, I believe.
Yeah, we need to, yes. But we need to, again, education is a huge thing for me. We have to work on, finding solutions for everybody, and we have to make sure that, every student has the ability to learn.
But I want the listening audience needs to know that Matt is right. There was a group of Republicans that did not support school choice, and they largely got voted out in the last election. Not all of them, but a large chunk of them who did not support school choice got voted out. So clearly the people of Texas support school choice. G2, you got 1 minute. Anything you got to say on school choice?
That school choice issue is important. It's becoming more important every day as parents find out what's going on in the schools. There's still millions of parents that don't know about the filth that's being put across in these schools. And it's not just outside of Texas. It's happening in Texas as well. And if you're in a school system that's controlled by radicals who are on a school board who are pushing these pornographic books to children, you as a parent have no choice to get out of there without a formal school choice program that's implemented at the state level. And this is going to be one of the most important issues over the next 3 to 5 years. Parents are demanding that they have an option as to how their kids are educated, and they're demanding that they have a voice in that decision. And I'm extremely hopeful that the Republican majority in the Texas legislature is going to create that choice for parents in Texas, to give them more options, which inevitably should result in better costs as well.
There was one heck of a fight in the Texas state legislature this past year over school choice. It ultimately failed. It failed because there was a contingent of Republicans that partnered with Democrats to make sure it failed. And largely those Republicans lost in their primaries. So the voters spoke. Guys, I'd like to thank you both. I'd like to thank G2, and I'd like to thank Matt Morgan. Matt Morgan, candidate again for Republican Party. Which district?
House District 26. If you guys want to find me at morganfortexas.com.
Great. All right, guys, we'll see you again next week. This time, 1